with David because I met Iman on Cork Street in, I think it was 1993. And she introduced me to David, and that was it. That was the beginning of a great journey into helping him acquire some really fantastic modern British pictures. The first time I met him, we had this engaged conversation about modern British pictures, and he's so enthusiastic about the field that I ran home and I dumped my entire rather small library into 2 boxes and drove it straight back to the hotel. And by the end of the weekend, I think he'd read every book. It would usually start with a very early phone call or a night before phone call, and I would meet him in my car at his hotel, and we'd pile into the car and off we'd drive. And we would stop at Sotheby's and we would go down to the basements. I would have tagged and shown him pieces that we thought would be of interest, and we would just go and examine them. He was very hands-on. He liked to see things himself. He was a first-hand collector. We would have been down in a warehouse much like this. I'm having a look at it. I mean, this is exactly, it's me and my flashlight. We would have seen it in a poor-ish illustration, so we wouldn't really have seen any of the really, really cool casting marks and found objects that Palozzi loved to put in these sculptures of this period. And we were looking for, his thumbprint, literally, which you can see here. So anybody who was looking at Palozzi knew that this was an important piece. We were not special in that regard, but what people don't really understand is David would have been here looking at this piece himself and really deciding whether this was a piece for him over and above other pieces. When I look back at the collection and what we did together, there was a lot of digging around and a lot of thinking about why this painting versus that painting, or why this sculpture. So you can think of the Gilman that we bought, and Mrs. Mountain was a very specific purchase. There are 3 of them out there. Mrs. Mountain never comes onto the marketplace. If you're interested in modern British pictures, this is really significant. So he would be paying a record price. It's not that he suddenly decided that was a great picture and I'm going to buy it. And in the same sale, he was buying very modest pieces that we were looking for. So we were bouncing in values, but we knew exactly why we were doing it. The Giacometti tender hands, and this incredibly delicate modelling, this beautiful queen. We were really interested in what was happening in the 50s and 60s with British sculpture and the rawness of it. And I think something about the hands-on material use of these sculptors of that period was really fascinating to him. Of course, you have discussions, heated discussions about what is good or not good. The Caulfield, for example, was not my favourite, and now is my favourite, because I thought it was very English. I could smell the wet carpet, I didn't like the colour, so all my personal, sort of disaffection with the vocabulary was the very reason David quite rightly wanted to buy it, because there was something that he was digging for. This was the one that he wanted, and he knew exactly why he wanted to buy it. Basquiat is an amazing artist, and David was filming this Andy Warhol role in the Basquiat film. He was talking to Schnabel. I think he spoke to as many of his friends about Basquiat. He understood why Basquiat was important for him. So when it came to Air Power, when he saw the picture, he knew it was the piece that he wanted. You got this sort of tufty-headed Warholian character, and you got Basquiat. So again, it wasn't sort of, oh, Kate, here's the picture I want and this is why. It was both of us going, this is really good, we know exactly why we want it, let's try and get it. You could see that this was a man who had a fascination for both the ordinary and also the extraordinary, but he would never look for the extraordinary in fashionable places. He did his own research and he found those tipping points, those transitional points himself. His engagement was intense. He really came to it with tremendous curiosity. I might have pointed out a great picture in that particular field, but I never ever felt as I was teaching him anything. He seemed to like to dig deep and enthusiastically into something. It became an occupation. He was not a Sunday collector. He was not an armchair critic. He was deeply involved with the vocabulary. And it kept him awake, and it was his entertainment, and it was his reading, and it was his pastime, and it was his enthusiasm. It was his full-time job, I thought, but of course he did have a full-time job as well, so I don't know where he got the energy.